This is a one-time only tutorial video explaining 3 different types of loops. We're going to start with the do until loop, we're going to move on to the while when loop, and we're going to close out with the for next loop. Let's go ahead and get started. Here, first we're going to show you how to get into the VBA modules, whether it is Microsoft Excel or Word. We're going to start off with getting into Microsoft Excel's VBA module window. First, you're going to look for the 9th tab at the very top of your Microsoft Excel menu options. You're going to look for the Developer tab, and you're looking at a print screen of that right now. I've enlarged it. Here is a print screen where it actually shows you the developer tag has a check mark by it. Once you click on it, move down to the second row, the far left side, you're going to click on Visual Basic, not macros, but Visual Basic. That takes you into a new screen. If you're just logging into or opening up Microsoft Excel for the first time, choose the sheet that you want to be in. In this case, choose sheet 1. Click on it. Now you're in the VBA module window. That's what it looks like, an empty window. This right here shows you one of my default tutorial codes that I've used in my new loop book. And as you can see, I pasted into the VBA module from my Word document. The 5th line is all red. That means it will not be accepted by the module. I have to change that to something that makes sense to VBA. I have to change it to VBA Codes, otherwise known as built-in objects, paths. A built-in object in Microsoft VBA or JavaScript or any other program language is nothing more than the things that come with the application. For instance, when you have a home, it comes with a door and windows. So basically, folder paths come with any computer programming language. Sort of like a file cabinet system at your place of employment. You know what building it's in, you know what floor it's on, you know what office it's in, and what file cabinet drawer. That's basically what a VBA built-in module is. So when you see the different periods and then something else following it, it's just nothing more than a path. Let's move on. This right here shows you a blank Microsoft Excel spreadsheet window. We're going to fill that out. We're going to fill out column A and column B. And we're going to need that information once we fill it out in order to populate column C using VBA codes. Open up your Microsoft Excel spreadsheet and do what I've just asked you to do. And looking at this sample right here, I want you to type exactly what you see for column A and column B. Column A represents column 1. Column B represents column 2. That's computer language. Everything is a number. The rows speak for themselves. They already have the number there. Row 1, row 2, etc. Using the cells built-in object for Microsoft VBA, whether it is in Word or Excel, it has 2 criteria. The very first is for rows, always. Then there's a comma separating them, and the next one and last one is for columns. And they must always be in that order: rows first, then columns. So columns, as I said, the 3rd column would be C, the 2nd column would be B, the 1st column would be A, etc. Let's move on. Once again, we're looking at the VBA module where I've pasted the code in to the module from my Word document, and as I said, we're going to change the 5th line that's showing red right now. But if you look at the 3rd line where you have the number 2, that means we're going to start the counter at 2 instead of 0. In VBA or any program language, you can give names to containers. A sub is nothing more than a container that holds the entire VBA code. A dim statement basically means to make or create something. Basically make or create a new name for a container that's going to hold something. In this case, we've named the complete VBA subtag create name for complete code, and for the container that's going to hold your number, your counter number, we're going to call that create your own integer name. And where you see next to it as integer, that means what's going to go in this container is going to be a number only, nothing more. Below that, now that we've created the container for the counter, we have to put something in it or start it off, the count. So we have the third line, create your own integer name, which is the name of the container that's going to hold the number. We tell it to start at 2. The fourth line is the do statement. And all you put on that line is do. Go to the next line. This next line that you see in red is where we're actually going to put a code, which is what we want it to do if the criteria are met. The line below that is the container name that's holding the counter equals the container name plus 1. So let's just say we start the counter off, because we're going to start the counter off at 2. So once the criteria are met and it does what it needs to do, it adds 1 to that, so it's going to be 3 the next time. So then it'll go down and say, is the criteria met, and it will populate the cell. It will add another 1 until the criteria is no longer met. Below that is the criteria that must be met. Loop until cells the create your own integer name, which is the container name only that's holding a number. So create your own integer name is basically, it's going to start off as 2. And once again, remember we said the first criteria represents the row, so it's going to be cell row 2, comma, with row in conjunction with column 2. So that will start the counter off in cell B2. Now it says loop until cell B2 is equal to nothing. Basically what it means, because we said we don't have an absolute there for the row. The column is absolute. You must stay in column B, but the row changes. So basically what that statement says is loop in column B, the second column, until that cell within that column is empty, and then it closes out. Let's go ahead and move on. This right here I tried to explain a little bit better. Of course, I put the start loop. You see it there in the cell C3. It should have been up in started in cell C2, because we said that we're starting the counter at 2. So C2 should hold the start loops. C3 should hold the number 3. C4 should hold the number 4. C5 should hold the number 5. But C6 is correct. Empty cell, stop there. That is where the counter, when it reaches that cell, because it's going to stay in B, it's going to stop the count. And so that means nothing else is going to be done at that point. Here is the cell that I'm going to put in there. What I want to do is I want to populate the C column. In order to get something in that column, I've told what I want C column to equal. So in this statement, looking at line 5, it says that column C, dealing with the counter, because the counter is going to be used for the row. So in column C, let's just say for this one, column C will equal whatever is in the corresponding column B times 0.15. So let's say that column B2 has a 2 in there, $2 in there. So we're going to multiply that $2 by 0.15, and the result of that is going to go into the adjoining column C. So that'll be C2 will equal whatever that amount is. So let's go ahead and move on. Here it is. I have actually color-coded the line so that you can see it better. This is the result after running the code. It populates the corresponding C columns with the end result of whatever is in B column multiplied by 0.15. Notice that it stops at the 6th line. That's because it stays in column B. The criteria says to keep looping in column B until you come to an empty cell. So B6 is empty. That's where the loop that's where the loop stops. That's why you won't see anything on the 6th row or any of the rows under that. Let's move on. We've already talked about how you actually enter the VBA module for Microsoft Excel, so we're not going to discuss that again. We're going to move on to the while loop, or the while loop statement. So once we're in the VBA module, we're going to look at another default while Wend tag, and it basically shows you how to write it. Everything in this stays the same. When you look at this, the purple or violet text is absolute. It must be what is in your while Wend loop statement. The other colors mean you can name those things anything you want. And I've color coded. You see the green text? The green is the counter name, and we've already discussed that, so I won't discuss it again. But look at how it differs from the do until statement. And everything is going to be the same. In this case, we're saying do this loop while the column 2 content value is not equal to empty. That is another way of writing the loop that would be identical to the do until loop. And notice once again we have for the 5th line, you're going to do the red statement. If the red statement is true, do these things below. So if that statement is not met, let's say for instance we're in the 6th row. We already saw that the 6th row is empty. So when it comes to an empty row, line 5 will not allow the loop to execute below that line. So that means you wouldn't add another integer to it. Let's move on. This right here, pasting from my Microsoft Word document into my VBA module for Excel, you see the red line, the 5th line will not be accepted by the module VBA. So I have to change that so that it makes sense. And let's go ahead and write that. Here I've color coded it again so it makes it easy. It's the exact same thing I'm telling it to do. Column C, the value in column C must be the content that's in a corresponding column B multiplied by 0.15. This is it in the module. And when I run the code, this is the result. Okay, the last VBA loop we're going to discuss is the for loop. This one is going to be done in Microsoft Word, so let's go ahead and tell you how to get in to the module. Look for the Developer tab. I think once again it is the 9th tab in your Microsoft Word document, and everything I'm doing here is from Microsoft Word or Excel 2010. Okay. Once you click on the Developer tab in Microsoft Word, go down to the 2nd row all the way to the far left and click on Visual Basic. Not Macros, but Visual Basic. This is what the module looks like when it opens up for you. We are looking at a default layout for a for next statement. In this case, I've used an if statement with the for next statement. And I'll let you look at that on your own. It's the exact same thing I've already discussed in the other two, so I won't repeat myself. But in this case, the if line says if, let's say that we have an active document, a Microsoft Word document with 5 images in it, photos. An inline shape is a photo or picture that you've inserted into the document. And just like any computer application. It has a brain that tracks everything. Unlike us humans, we do things and we don't keep track of it, but a computer keeps track of everything. It keeps track of the number of images inserted into it, and it keeps track of the order in which those images were inserted. So once again, let's say that we have 5 images in our entire document. The statement, the if statement says if the counter number is going to start at 1 this time. If the counter number is anywhere from 1 to 5, let's just say it's 1 right now. So that means create your own integer name will basically mean 1. So if 1 is greater than the total number of paragraphs in that document, and the images in that document, if you go to another line, like you do an enter or a heart return, that's considered a paragraph, whether it's an image or text or a header or not. So let's say that in the entire document we have 15 paragraphs in all, which includes headers 1, headers 2, regular normal paragraph, text, and images. So it says that if number 1 is greater than 15, then end. Well, 1 is not greater than 15, so we can keep continuing. And we've already said, let's just pretend that we have 5 photos inserted into the active document in all. So anywhere from 1 to the total number of paragraphs, if it's 15, the loop is going to keep looping until it actually goes beyond 15 paragraphs for the if statement. So the if statement hasn't been met, so we don't need to stop the loop. So we can go to the next line, the for statement line, which is on line 5. So now the for statement says let's say that we're starting at number 1 for the counter, the integer number, and we say we have 5 images in our active document, and we have 15 paragraphs in all, which includes headers 1s, headers 2s, normal text, paragraphs, and even images inserted into it. So for number 1 equals 1 to, in this case, active document.paragraph.count means a total number of paragraphs in that entire active document. We said it's 15. So if 1 is equal to 1 to 15, and 1 is equal to 1 to 15. If we had a 15 there, 15 will be equal to 1 to 15 because it's still in that range. But if we had, let's say, for 16 equal to 1 to 15, that is not within that range. So that criteria has not been met, and we would not go to the next line. But since we're starting the counter at 1, the criteria has been met, so we move to the next line, which is line 6. And this tells us what we're going to do since the criteria was met. Active document.inline shapes, and the inline shape number is based on the counter. So let's just say that we're starting at number 1 for the counter. So active inline shape number 1 that was inserted into the document range dot paragraphs dot alignment, and we've already said the criteria is met, so we want the alignment for all inline shapes to be centered. Then it says next on line 7, which means once we do that for the first image, we need to increase the loop number, and that's why you have the integer container equals integer container plus 1. So we started with 1, we're going to say 1 plus 1 would equal 2. So now we're looking for the second image, etc., etc. This is what the complete code looks like pasted in the VBA module for Microsoft Word. Here I'm showing you an example where I have color-coded the line that's actually doing something, the line that will be executed if all the criteria are met. This is Microsoft Word, a blank Microsoft Word document. This is where I've typed in text and basically have blank lines and things like that, paragraph lines. And then I have images inserted in there. Notice that everything is left aligned right now. And I have 8 pages in all, so you have 2 screens right here. And the second screen is just basically all images. They're all left aligned. Now, I'm going to run the code. This is what happens. You see that the error box pops up. We're going to just go ahead and press debug. And look at what happened. This is the result. The images are now center aligned, but the text is still left aligned because the code only instructed us to do something with inline images. Inline images is only photos, pictures. It's not shapes like circles and squares. They won't be affected if they were in this document. Normal text will not be affected. Headers will not be affected. Now let's go ahead and do another for next statement. This one, still dealing with images, inline shapes. We want to reduce the size of the images all, or increase them all so that they're at 25 points in height and in width. So the statement says, if the counter is greater than the total number of inline shapes in that document, let's say we have 7 images, because that's what we have in the example that we're using. So we're starting the counter at 1. So if 1 is greater than 7, then end this. Don't do anything. Well, 1 is not greater than 7, so we can move on to the line below the end if statement. So now on the for line, we have, and once again, we're starting the counter at 1. So for 1 equals 1 to total number of inline shapes in the document. There are 7 in all. So 1 is equal to 1 to 7. 5 is equal to 1 to 7 because it's within that range. But if we have a 0 or an 8 and above, then let's say the counter was at 8. 8 is not equal to the range between the count between 1 and 7. It's greater, so the loop would not allow you to go any further. It wouldn't do anything if that counter reaches 8. But the counter anywhere from 1 to 7, it will execute whatever is below the for statement line. So let's move on since the criteria has been met. So you notice here you have the with statement and you have a selection object. When you must always look at your code carefully. Whenever you see the selection in a VBA code, that means something in the document needs to be selected. If you run a code that contains selection in your VBA coding and you don't select something in your Excel spreadsheet or your Microsoft Word document or your PowerPoint slides, nothing will happen. You'll get an error message. And we're going to show you what happens with that. This right here is a sample that I'm using. I have inserted 4 large images taking up most of the page, and I've also have text at the very top, 1 paragraph of text. I'm going to run the for statement that contains a selection object in it, but I'm not going to select anything. And watch what happens. I receive an error. I'm just going to hit debug, and then I'm going to show you exactly what it looks like, the error message. Okay, press the debug button. Now look, I have done a print screen of me selecting everything, Control A. Now I'm going to run the code again after I've selected everything. No error messages. Look at what happened. The text has not been affected at the top, but the images have shrunk. Alright,